The light of Fatima. In the golden sands of Mecca, under the vast sky that bore witness to the birth of a new faith, a child was born, one who would become a guiding light for generations to come. She was Fatima, the beloved daughter of Prophet Muhammad PBUH, the one whom he called Amabiha, the mother of her father. From the very beginning, Fatima's life was unlike that of other children. She did not grow up in comfort or luxury, but in an atmosphere charged with the struggles of her father's mission. Islam was young, fragile, and under constant threat. Yet, in the midst of these trials, Fatima grew with an extraordinary strength of spirit. She was no ordinary child. Even as a little girl, she saw her father humiliated and ridiculed by the Quraysh. One day, when Prophet Muhammad PBUH was praying at the Kaaba, a group of his enemies placed the intestines of a camel on his back while he was in prostration. The onlookers laughed, mocking him. But while grown men stood by in silence, it was young Fatima who rushed forward, tears in her eyes, removing the filth with her small hands. She stood beside her father, her heart swelling with both love and defiance. That day, her spirit was marked by an unshakable resolve to stand for truth no matter the cost. A father's comfort, a nation's hope. Her mother, Khadija R.A., was the first to believe in Islam and the strongest support for the Prophet PBUH. But when she passed away, grief filled their home like a silent storm. Fatima was still young, yet she understood that her father, the messenger of God, needed her. She became his comfort, his shadow. Whenever he returned home, weary from the burdens of prophethood, it was Fatima who greeted him with warmth and care. Even in hardship, she never complained. Food was scarce, persecution was constant, and life was uncertain. Yet Fatima remained unwavering in her faith. The people of Mecca could shake mountains, but they could not shake her belief in her father's message. When the Muslims migrated to Medina, Fatima's journey was not just a physical one, but an emotional and spiritual transformation. In this new city, her father established the first Muslim society, and she took on greater responsibilities, not just within her family, but within the community. Then came the day that changed her life forever, her marriage to Ali ibn Abi Talib, R.A. The wedding of simplicity and love. The news of her proposal spread quickly. Many noble companions had sought her hand, but it was Ali, the Prophet's cousin and closest companion, who was chosen for her. Ali was not a wealthy man. His possessions were few, a sword, a shield, and his unshakable faith in God. But Fatima did not seek wealth. She sought righteousness. The Prophet, PBUH, himself prepared her for the marriage, ensuring that her dowry was modest. There was no extravagant feast, no golden palace, just love, faith, and trust. When Fatima entered Ali's home, it was a simple dwelling, yet to her it was filled with light. Together, they built a life of patience and devotion. She cooked, cleaned, and cared for their children, Hassan and Hussein, who would later become symbols of courage in Islam. But Fatima was more than just a homemaker. She was a teacher, an advisor, and a pillar of wisdom for the women of Medina. Despite the hardships of life, Fatima and Ali's love remained strong. They were partners in faith, standing side by side through every trial. A legacy of strength and faith. The greatest test of Fatima's strength came with the passing of her father. The day the Prophet PBUH left this world, Fatima felt as though the sun had set forever. She clung to his teachings, but her heart ached for his presence. The political turmoil that followed shook the Muslim world. Fatima found herself in the midst of the debates over leadership. She spoke with eloquence, defended the rights of her husband, and reminded the people of the teachings of the Prophet PBUH. But despite her efforts, the weight of grief and struggle took its toll. Within a few months of her father's passing, Fatima fell ill. As she lay on her bed, her soul preparing to return to her Creator, she whispered words of prayer. Her final wish was simple, that she be buried quietly, away from the eyes of those who had caused her pain. And so, under the cover of night, Ali fulfilled her wish, laying her to rest in an unmarked grave. Her physical presence was gone, but her legacy remained. Fatima was not just the daughter of the Prophet PBUH. She was a symbol of resilience, justice, and unwavering faith. Her story continues to inspire, a reminder that true strength is not in power or wealth, but in faith and devotion. Even today, her name is spoken with love and reverence. She was a woman of dignity, a mother of heroes, and a light that continues to shine through history. Fatima's life teaches us that even in the face of trials, one can stand firm, guided by faith, and leave behind a legacy that will never fade. The birth of Fatima, a light in times of darkness. The city of Mecca was restless. The air was thick with tension as the message of Islam began to take root in the hearts of a few, while the powerful elites of Quraysh resisted it with all their might. It was in this time of great upheaval, during the 5th year of prophethood, that a child was born into the house of Muhammad PBUH and Khadija RA, a child who would grow up to be one of the most revered women in history. Her name was Fatima. Unlike the daughters of wealthy Quraysh nobles, who were born into luxury and ease, Fatima was born into struggle. Her father was no ordinary man. He was the messenger of Allah, a man whose mission had already made him the target of hostility and persecution. From the moment she opened her eyes to the world, her life was intertwined with the trials of Islam. A childhood in the shadow of prophethood. Fatima's early years were spent in the comforting embrace of her mother, Khadija. She grew up in a household unlike any other, a house that was not filled with riches, but with faith, wisdom, and sacrifice. Unlike other children who played freely in the streets of Mecca, Fatima's childhood was shaped by the pain her family endured for the sake of the truth. She was still a small child when she witnessed some of the harshest moments of her father's mission. One such moment became deeply etched in her memory. One day, the Prophet PBUH was praying near the Kaaba, his face turned toward the sky, his voice calling upon his Lord. The leaders of Quraysh, angered by his growing influence, decided to humiliate him. Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, one of the most ruthless enemies of Islam, took the intestines of a camel and threw them onto the Prophet's back while he was in sujud. The men around him laughed cruelly, mocking the messenger of Allah. But amidst the jeers and insults, a small figure ran toward him. It was Fatima. Though barely 6 or 7 years old, she pushed through the crowd, tears brimming in her eyes. With her tiny hands, she wiped away the filth from her father's back. She looked at the men who had dishonored him, and, in a voice trembling with both anger and innocence, she defended her father. The Quraysh scoffed at her, amused by the sight of a child standing against them. But in that moment, Fatima showed a glimpse of the strength and courage that would define her entire life. The loss that changed everything. As she grew, Fatima became inseparable from her father. She saw the suffering of the early Muslims, the torture of Bilal, the starvation during the boycott, and the cruelty of Quraysh. But nothing could have prepared her for the year that would change her life forever. The year of sorrow. It was the year when Fatima lost her mother, Khadija R.A. The woman who had been the heart of their home, the one who had stood by the Prophet through every hardship, was now gone. The house that had once echoed with her warmth now felt unbearably empty. Fatima, though still young, had to grow up faster than most children. She saw the weight of grief on her father's face, and without hesitation, she took on the role her mother had left behind. Whenever the Prophet returned home, exhausted from the trials of his mission, Fatima would comfort him, care for him, and remind him that he was never alone. It was for this reason that he lovingly called her Abiha, the mother of her father. Growing up amidst the challenges of Islam, as persecution in Mecca worsened, Fatima saw her father injured, insulted, and attacked countless times. But instead of breaking her, it forged her into a woman of unshakable faith. When the Muslims were exiled to the harsh valley of Shirbi Abi Talib, she endured hunger and hardship alongside her father and the small Muslim community. When the Prophet PBUH made the momentous decision to migrate to Medina, she did not hesitate to leave behind the only home she had ever known. She grew up not in ease, but in sacrifice. She learned that true strength was not in wealth or power, but in faith, patience, and unwavering devotion to Allah. By the time she reached adulthood, Fatima was not just the daughter of the Prophet. She was his closest confidant, his source of comfort, and a pillar of strength in the early Muslim community. Her life was about to take a new turn. Soon, she would step into a new chapter, one that would define her legacy forever. The chapter where she would become a wife, a mother, and a guiding light for the generations to come. Fatima, the light of her father's eyes. The loss of Khadija R.A. left an emptiness in their home, a silence that even time struggled to fill. The Prophet Muhammad PBUH, who had always found comfort in his wife's words, now carried his grief quietly. But in that sorrow, a young girl stood by him, her presence becoming the solace he needed. Fatima, the daughter who had inherited not just her mother's features, but also her strength, kindness, and unwavering faith. From the time she was a child, Fatima's love for her father was unlike any other. She was not just his daughter, she was his shadow, his supporter, and in many ways, his source of comfort in an increasingly hostile world. A daughter's love in times of hardship. The streets of Mecca had never been kind to the messenger of Allah. Fatima had seen it all, the stones thrown at him, the insults hurled his way, the cruel laughter of the Quraysh. But she never forgot the day that hurt her the most. One afternoon, the Prophet PBUH walked through the streets, calling people to Islam with the patience and gentleness he always showed. A group of Quraysh nobles, angered by his words, sent their men to attack him. They threw dust on his blessed head, their faces twisted with hatred. Fatima, still a young girl, rushed forward the moment she saw her father. Tears welled up in her eyes as she wiped the dirt from his hair, her small hands trembling. She looked at him with sorrow, but he smiled gently, placing his hand on her head. "Do not cry, my daughter," he whispered. "Your father is not alone. Allah is with him." She did not say anything, but in her heart she made a promise to always stand by him, no matter what. The mother of her father. As years passed, Fatima's bond with her father only grew stronger. She cooked for him, took care of his clothes, and made sure his home was a place of peace. Whenever he returned tired from the hardships of his mission, she was there, ready to comfort him with her kind words and loving presence. It was during this time that the Prophet, PBUH, began calling her by a special name, Abiha, the mother of her father. It was not just a title, it was a reflection of their deep connection. In a world that was often cruel to them, she was his safe haven, and in return, he loved her more than words could express. The Prophet's love for Fatima. The Prophet PBUH had many companions, but when it came to Fatima, his love was different. Whenever she entered a room, he would stand up to greet her. He would kiss her forehead and make her sit beside him. Aisha R.A., the beloved wife of the Prophet, once said, "I have not seen anyone who resembled the Prophet more in speech, character, and conduct than Fatima." Whenever she came to him, he would stand up, take her hand, kiss her, and seat her in his place. This love was not just because she was his daughter, it was because of who she was. She had inherited his patience, his compassion, and his unwavering faith in Allah. Medina, a new beginning, but the same love. When the Muslims migrated to Medina, Fatima was by her father's side. The hardships of Mecca were behind them, but new challenges awaited. Battles were fought, sacrifices were made, and the young Muslim community struggled to survive. But through it all, Fatima remained his support. She mended his clothes, prepared his meals, and cared for his wounds after battles. Whenever he felt sorrow, she was there to comfort him. And the Prophet, PBUH, never failed to remind her how dear she was to him. "Fatima is a part of me," he once said. "Whoever harms her, harms me." His words were not just a declaration of love. They were a testament to the unique and irreplaceable bond they shared. A love that transcended this world. As the years passed, Fatima's life changed. She married, became a mother, and took on new responsibilities. But her love for her father never wavered, and his love for her remained as strong as ever. But then a shadow fell over Medina. The Prophet, PBUH, fell ill. Fatima's heart ached as she watched him grow weaker each day. She sat by his side, holding his hand, her eyes filled with tears. She knew that the moment she had always feared was near. One day, he whispered something to her, and she began to cry. Then he whispered again, and she suddenly smiled. Later, Aisha, R.A., asked her what he had said. At first, he told me he would soon leave this world, and I cried, she explained. Then he told me that I would be the first of his family to join him, and I smiled. And so, even in his final moments, their bond remained unbroken. A few months after the passing of the Prophet PBUH, Fatima, R.A., too left this world. True to his words, she was the first to be reunited with him in the gardens of Jannah. Her life had been one of love, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. She was more than just a daughter. She was his greatest comfort, his unwavering support, and a light in the darkness. Even today, her name shines in history as Fatima al-Zahra, the Radiant One, a daughter whose love for her father knew no limits, not even death. A marriage of light and loyalty. The streets of Medina were quieter than usual. Ever since the passing of the Prophet Muhammad PBUH, a sorrow had settled over the city, lingering in its air like an unspoken grief. But inside a modest home, Fatima, R.A., sat with her children, her heart heavy yet steadfast. She had always been strong, always carried the weight of hardship with silent grace. Now as the daughter of the Prophet PBUH, as the wife of Ali, R.A., and as the mother of 2 young sons, she had more reasons than ever to be resilient. But before this moment, before she had become a wife and a mother, her journey had been one of devotion, sacrifice, and a love story written not in wealth and luxury, but in faith and endurance. A proposal unlike any other. It was in Medina, after the migration, that Fatima, R.A., reached the age of marriage. Many noble companions of the Prophet PBUH sought her hand, knowing that she was not just the daughter of their leader, but a woman of unmatched purity and strength. Yet each time the Prophet PBUH gently declined their proposals, waiting for the right person, the one chosen by Allah. Then came Ali ibn Abi Talib, R.A. Ali, R.A., was not a man of wealth, but he was a man of unshakable faith, courage, and sincerity. He had grown up in the house of the Prophet, PBUH, was among the first to accept Islam, and had stood by him in every battle, every hardship. But when it came to asking for Fatima's, R.A., hand, he hesitated. What did he have to offer her? Finally, mustering his courage, Ali, R.A., approached the Prophet, PBUH, his voice filled with humility. "O Messenger of Allah," he began, "I have come to ask for Fatima's hand in marriage." The Prophet, PBUH, smiled and asked, "What do you have as a dowry?" Ali, R.A., lowered his head. He had nothing but his armor. The Prophet, PBUH, nodded. "Sell your armor and use that as the dowry." And so, with the simplest of means, the marriage of Fatima, R.A., and Ali, R.A., was arranged not built on wealth, but on faith, love, and the blessings of Allah. A home of simplicity and love. Their home was small, their possessions few, but their love was rich. Fatima, R.A., embraced her new life with patience and gratitude, never once complaining about the hardships they faced. Ali, R.A., worked tirelessly, sometimes bringing home only a few dates or a handful of barley. Fatima, R.A., would grind the barley with her own hands, bake the bread, and care for the household. Her hands became rough from the labor, yet she never wavered. One day, Ali, R.A., saw the blisters on her hands and the exhaustion in her eyes. He suggested she ask her father for a servant. Fatima, R.A., went to the Prophet, PBUH, but before she could speak, he asked, "What brings you here, my beloved daughter?" She hesitated. She had never been one to ask for comfort, but Ali's, R.A., concern had moved her. Seeing the hesitation in her eyes, the Prophet, PBUH, understood. He gently took her hands and said, "Shall I not give you something better than a servant?" Fatima, R.A., nodded. "Say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times before you sleep. This will give you more strength than a servant." Fatima, R.A., never asked for anything again. Her strength came not from wealth, but from faith. Motherhood, the blessing of Hassan and Hussein. Allah bless Fatima, R.A., and Ali, R.A., with 2 sons, Hassan, R.A., and Hussein, R.A., both of whom would become beloved by the Prophet, PBUH, and honored in Islamic history. From the moment they were born, Fatima, R.A., raised them with the same love and wisdom she had received from her father. She taught them kindness, courage, and devotion to Allah. The Prophet Pbuh adored them, often carrying them on his shoulders, letting them climb on his back during prayer. He once said, "Hassan and Hussein are the leaders of the youth of paradise." Fatima, R.A., watched with pride as her sons grew, knowing they carried not just the bloodline of the Prophet Pbuh, but his spirit and mission as well. Trials and unwavering strength. Life was not without its hardships. The struggles of Ali, R.A., the challenges of leadership, the difficulties of living simply while others sought power. Fatima, R.A., faced them all with quiet strength. One day, when Ali, R.A., returned home, he found Fatima, R.A., praying intensely, her hands raised in supplication. "What are you praying for?" he asked. "For the poor, the needy, and our neighbors," she replied. Ali, R.A., smiled. "And for us." She looked at him and said, "Ali, if we care for others, Allah will take care of us." A love that withstood time. The love between Fatima, R.A., and Ali, R.A., was not the kind of love found in poetry or grand gestures. It was in the small moments, the way he defended her, the way she stood by him, the way they found comfort in each other in the simplest of ways. And when Fatima, R.A., fell ill, Ali, R.A., never left her side. He saw the light in her eyes dimming, the fatigue in her voice growing. "Ali," she whispered one evening, "I know my time is near." Ali, R.A., held her hand, his heart heavy. "Bury me at night," she requested, "so that those who wronged me will not see my grave." Her departure was not just the loss of a wife. It was the loss of the most beloved daughter of the Prophet Pbuh, the mother of his grandsons, and the light of their home. Ali, R.A., fulfilled her last wishes, and with a broken heart, he whispered a final farewell to the woman who had been his strength, his partner, and his greatest love. Fatima, R.A., was more than just a wife and mother. She was a legacy of love, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Her marriage to Ali, R.A., was not built on wealth, but on patience, struggle, and the desire to please Allah. And through her children, through the sacrifices they would one day make, her legacy would live on forever. A new beginning in Medina. The night was dark, but the road to Medina glowed with the hope of a new beginning. Fatima, R.A., walked beside her father, the Prophet Muhammad, Pbuh, her heart heavy yet filled with faith. The journey from Mecca had not been easy, leaving behind her childhood home, the memories of her mother, and the life she had known was painful. But she knew this was Allah's will, and she placed her trust in Him. As Medina appeared in the distance, a sense of relief washed over the travelers. The people of Medina, the Ansar helpers, welcomed them with open arms, their smiles erasing the exhaustion of the journey. Fatima, R.A., saw how the Prophet Pbuh was embraced, how his message was accepted with love, and she knew this was where their new life would begin. But Medina was not Mecca. It was different, the climate, the people, the customs. The hardships were not over. They had only changed form. Adapting to this new life was another test, one that Fatima, R.A., was ready to face. Building a home from nothing. Life in Medina was modest and filled with struggles. The Muhajirin, migrants from Mecca, had left everything behind, arriving with no wealth, no possessions, only faith. Fatima, R.A., saw her father working tirelessly to establish the new Muslim community, ensuring that no one was left behind. Despite being the daughter of the Prophet Pbuh, she never expected special treatment. She lived simply, helping in the house, grinding grain with her own hands, and enduring hunger just like everyone else. There were days when there was little to eat, but she never complained. She had learned patience from her father and gratitude from her mother, Khadija, R.A. Whenever the Prophet Pbuh looked at Fatima, R.A., he saw in her the same resilience and kindness that her mother had once shown. She was not just his daughter. She was his supporter, his comfort, his light. A pillar of strength for the Prophet Pbuh. The years in Medina were not peaceful. The Quraysh did not leave the Muslims alone. They waged wars, trying to destroy what the Prophet Pbuh had built. Fatima, R.A., saw her father return from battle, exhausted and wounded. She would rush to clean his injuries, her heart aching at the sight of his suffering. When the Prophet Pbuh was mocked by the hypocrites, she would stand by him, offering words of comfort. There was a time when the enemies of Islam threw filth on the Prophet Pbuh while he was praying at the Kaaba. Fatima, R.A., still young, rushed to him, her eyes filled with tears. She wiped the dirt from his blessed face, her hands trembling with anger. "Why do they do this to you, my father?" she asked, her voice breaking. The Prophet Pbuh looked at her with a gentle smile. "Do not be sad, my beloved daughter. Allah is with us." His patience became her patience. His strength became her strength. Her contributions to the Muslim community. Fatima, R.A., was not just a daughter. She was a role model for the women of Medina. She supported the Muslim women, teaching them about Islam, kindness, and patience. She stood beside her father in every challenge, offering comfort not just to him, but to the entire Muslim community. Whenever food was scarce, she would give away what little she had to those who needed it more. The poor, the widows, the orphans, Fatima, R.A. cared for them, just as her mother, Khadija, R.A., had done in Mecca. One day, a hungry man came to the Prophet's, Pbuh, house asking for food. The Prophet Pbuh sent him to Fatima, R.A. She had nothing in her home except a small loaf of bread, meant for her own children. But without hesitation, she gave it to the man. "We can sleep hungry," she said to Ali, R.A., that night, "but how could we let him leave empty-handed?" Such was her generosity, a reflection of the teachings of the Prophet Pbuh, standing firm in times of loss. Despite her contributions to the Muslim community, life did not get easier for Fatima, R.A. She had already lost her mother in Mecca, and in Medina more losses followed. She wept when her father's uncle Hamza, R.A., was martyred in the Battle of Uhud, his body brutalized by the enemies. She watched as the Prophet Pbuh buried his closest companions, one after another. But the greatest pain was yet to come. As the years passed, Fatima, R.A., saw the health of her father decline. His once strong frame weakened, his steps grew slower, his voice softer. She knew the time was near. One day, the Prophet Pbuh whispered something to her, and she began to cry. Then he whispered again, and she smiled through her tears. Later, when asked what he had said, she replied, "He told me he would soon leave this world, and that made me cry. But then he told me that I would be the first to join him, and that made me smile." And just as he had said, not long after his passing, Fatima, R.A., left this world, reuniting with her beloved father. A legacy that lives on. Fatima, R.A., was more than just the daughter of the Prophet Pbuh. She was his shadow, his comfort, his strength in times of hardship. She lived a life of simplicity, generosity, and unwavering faith. Through her, Islam saw a woman of honor, patience, and sacrifice. Through her children, Hassan, R.A., and Hussein, R.A., her legacy continued. And though she left this world young, her name lives on, a symbol of purity, devotion, and the undying love between a daughter and her father. The aftermath of loss. The air in Medina felt different. The streets, once filled with the comforting presence of the Prophet Muhammad Pbuh, now carried a heavy silence. Fatima, R.A., sat in her home, her heart burdened with grief. Her father, the man who had been her guide, her strength, her world, was gone. She had known this day would come. He had told her, in those final moments, that she would soon join him. But nothing had prepared her for the emptiness his absence left behind. Each morning, she would wake up expecting to hear his voice. Each evening, she longed to see his smile. The weight of sorrow bore down on her, but the world did not stop for grief. The loss of the Prophet Pbuh was not just a personal tragedy. It was a turning point for the Muslim community. And Fatima, R.A., soon found herself facing challenges far greater than the pain in her heart. A house of sorrow, a heart of strength. Medina, once a city of unity, now buzzed with tension. The question of leadership after the Prophet's, Pbuh, death had divided opinions. Many had already pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr, R.A., while others believed Ali, R.A., the Prophet's cousin and Fatima's husband, was the rightful successor. Fatima, R.A., did not seek power or position. What she sought was justice. She had watched her husband, a man of courage and wisdom, remain silent despite knowing his rights. She knew he chose patience over conflict for the sake of unity, but she also knew that silence could not erase the truth. Her grief did not weaken her. It strengthened her resolve. She would not let history forget what was right. The Sermon of Fadak, a voice against injustice. Among the matters of dispute was the land of Fadak, a fertile oasis given to Fatima, R.A., by the Prophet, P.B.U.H., during his lifetime. After his passing, the new leadership refused to acknowledge her ownership, claiming that prophets left no inheritance. Fatima, R.A., knew this was not true. Fadak was not just land. It was a symbol of her father's truth, her husband's rights, and her own dignity. And so, she did what few women of that time had ever done. She stood before the leaders of Medina in the Grand Mosque and delivered a sermon that echoed through history. Her voice, though weakened by sorrow, held the strength of conviction. O people, know that I am Fatima, and my father is Muhammad P.B.U.H. Whatever I say, I speak the truth. She reminded them of her father's sacrifices, of the teachings of Islam, of the justice he had always upheld. She questioned why, after everything, she was being denied what was rightfully hers. Her words were powerful, filled with knowledge of the Quran and the Prophet's, P.B.U.H., own teachings. The people listened, some in awe, some in shame. But the decision remained unchanged. Fadak was not returned to her. She left the mosque, her head held high. She had spoken the truth. Whether they accepted it or not was between them and Allah. The weight of suffering. Fatima, R.A., returned home exhausted. The grief of losing her father, the pain of injustice, and the betrayal she felt weighed heavily on her. Her husband Ali, R.A., sat beside her, his heart aching at the sight of her sorrow. He knew her pain was not just for Fadak, it was for the future of the Ummah. In the following days, Fatima's health began to decline. The burden she had carried, the loss, the struggles, the battles she fought with words and faith, had taken their toll. One night, she called Ali, R.A., to her side. Her voice was soft but firm. Ya Ali, I feel my time is near. When I leave this world, bury me at night. Let no one who wronged me stand at my grave. Tears filled Ali's, R.A., eyes, but he nodded. He would honor her wishes. A farewell in the darkness. And so, in the quiet of the night, Fatima, R.A., left this world, just as her father had foretold. Ali, R.A., Hassan, R.A., Hussein, R.A., and a handful of trusted companions carried out her burial in secrecy. No grand procession, no public farewell, just the silent tears of those who loved her. Her grave remains unmarked, its exact location unknown to this day. A symbol of her quiet suffering, her unshakable strength, and her final protest against injustice. Her legacy lives on. Fatima, R.A., did not seek wealth, power, or recognition. She sought truth, justice, and righteousness. Her children, Hassan, R.A., and Hussein, R.A., carried forward her legacy. Through them, the light of the Prophet, P.B.U.H., and Fatima, R.A., continued to shine. Even today, her name is spoken with reverence. She remains a symbol of patience, courage, and unwavering faith. Though the world tested her, she never wavered. And in the end, she returned to the one she loved most, her father, the messenger of Allah, P.B.U.H. May Allah be pleased with her and grant us the strength to follow in her footsteps. The final days of Fatima, R.A. The house of Ali, R.A. and Fatima, R.A. was quieter than ever. The air inside carried a heaviness that words could not explain. The passing of the Prophet Muhammad, P.B.U.H., had changed everything. Fatima, R.A., had never been the same since that day. Grief had settled in her heart, and her body, once full of life, had grown weak. The sorrow of losing her father, the injustices she had witnessed, and the weight of unspoken pain had drained her strength. She had always been strong. She had stood by her father through the most difficult times, had spoken against oppression, and had raised her children with unwavering love. But now even standing for long became difficult. One evening, as she sat with Ali, R.A., She looked at him with eyes full of meaning. She knew her time was near. "Ya Ali," she said softly, "I do not have long in this world. There is something I need to ask of you." Ali, R.A., looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. He had already lost the Prophet PBUH. The thought of losing Fatima, R.A., was unbearable. "When I leave this world, bury me at night. Let not those who have wronged me stand at my grave. And Ali, take care of our children. Tell them about their mother." Tears welled in Ali's, R.A., eyes, but he nodded. He would honor her wishes. A mother's love, a final goodbye. Fatima, R.A., called her two young sons, Hassan, R.A., and Hussein, R.A., close to her. She gently stroked their hair, her heart aching at the thought of leaving them. They were still so young, too young to lose their mother. "My dear sons," she whispered, "never forget the teachings of your grandfather. Always stand for justice, even if the world turns against you. And remember, your mother loves you." Hassan, R.A., held onto her hand tightly, while Hussein, R.A., buried his face in her lap. Neither of them understood fully, but they could sense something was changing. Ali, R.A., watched in silence. His heart felt heavy, but he remained strong for her. The night of farewell. As the night deepened, Fatima, R.A., lay on her bed, her breathing slow and labored. She closed her eyes and whispered her final words. "Oh, my father, the time has come. I long to be with you." And with that, her soul departed, returning to the one who had created her. Ali, R.A., sat beside her, silent. He had seen her struggle, he had heard her pain, and now he saw her at peace. Tears fell down his face, but he had no time for long mourning. She had asked for a quiet burial, away from the eyes of those who had wronged her. And so, in the stillness of the night, Ali, R.A., along with a few trusted companions, prepared her for burial. The streets of Medina were silent. No grand procession, no public gathering. Just the quiet steps of those who loved her. Under the cover of darkness, they laid Fatima, R.A., to rest, her grave unmarked, as she had wished. No one knew exactly where she was buried. Perhaps that was her final protest against the injustice she had faced. A legacy that lives on. Though Fatima, R.A., left this world at a young age, her legacy never faded. She was the mother of Hassan, R.A., and Hussein, R.A., the leaders of the youth of Jannah. Through them, her love, strength, and sacrifice continued to inspire generations. Her life was one of patience, courage, and unwavering faith. Even today, when people speak her name, they speak of a woman who stood firm in the face of loss, who spoke truth against power, and who remained faithful until her last breath. Fatima, R.A., was not just the daughter of the Prophet PBUH. She was a symbol of resilience, a voice of justice, a mother of a legacy that would never die. May Allah be pleased with her and grant us the strength to follow in her footsteps. The enduring legacy of Fatima, R.A. The night was quiet, but in the hearts of the people of Medina, the absence of Fatima, R.A., was louder than words. She had left this world, yet her presence remained, woven into the lives of those who loved and admired her. Her story did not end with her passing. It began anew in the memories of those who had witnessed her strength, her faith, and her unwavering stand for justice. A symbol of resilience and justice, Fatima, R.A., was more than just the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad PBUH. She was a living embodiment of his teachings. She had stood beside her father in the harshest of times, comforted him when the world turned against him, and after his passing, she spoke out against injustice even when it came at great personal cost. Her famous sermon of Fadak, delivered in the Mosque of Medina, was not just a speech, it was a declaration of truth, a stand against oppression. She spoke with the eloquence of her father, the wisdom of her mother, and the courage of a believer who feared no one but Allah. Her words echoed through history, reminding every generation. A true believer does not remain silent in the face of injustice. Even in her final days, as her health faded, she did not waver. She passed away with her dignity intact, leaving behind a legacy that could not be buried. Loved and revered across generations. From the moment she left this world, Her name became one of love and reverence. In the Sunni tradition, she is a model of piety, a beloved daughter, and a devoted mother. Her life serves as an example of faith, patience, and the highest form of devotion to Allah. For the Shia community, she is the heart of Ahlul Bayt, the mother of Imams, and a symbol of resistance against oppression. Her struggles and sacrifices are remembered as a guiding light for those who seek justice. But beyond sects and differences, her story belongs to all Muslims. She is Fatima al-Zahra, the Radiant One, the Sayyidah of the women of Jannah, the daughter of the best of creation. Her legacy was not one of power or wealth. It was one of faith, love, and sacrifice. The mother of a lasting legacy. Her sons Hassan R.A. and Hussein R.A. carried her teachings forward. Hassan R.A., with his patience and wisdom, upheld peace and unity. Hussein R.A., with his bravery, stood against tyranny in Karbala, giving his life for the same justice his mother had once spoken about. Through them, Fatima R.A. lived on. Through every scholar who speaks of truth, through every woman who upholds her faith despite hardship, through every believer who stands against oppression, her legacy breathes. Inspiration for today and beyond. Today, centuries later, her name still inspires millions. In every home where a mother raises her children with love and patience, Fatima R.A. is remembered. In every heart that seeks justice, her courage is honored. In every woman who walks with dignity, faith, and strength, her light shines. She was not just a woman of her time. She was a woman for all time. May we all learn from her strength, her faith, and her unwavering devotion to Allah. Fatima R.A. did not just leave a legacy, she became one.